Welcome. Yes, a night of blood-curdling tales submitted by users from around the world. I'm gonna be reading you bedtime stories, beautiful lullabies, and we don't know what we'll find. These are all user-submitted, real ghost stories from yourghoststories.com. We're gonna start off tonight with one entitled It's Not Over by Love Paranormal. Submitted August 19th, 2008 from Indiana, the United States. I was under the impression that since I had not heard anything recently, that made things had kind of gone back to normal. Little did I know that things were just getting started. I was under the impression that since I had not heard anything recently, that maybe things have kind of just gone back to normal. I was in my bedroom watching television with my husband, and the remote to the television was at our feet. We have a king-size bed, and it's pretty far from me, at least to reach it from where I was. It was nowhere close to my hubby's feet either. Well, all of a sudden the channel changes. I thought he had kicked the remote, and he thought I had kicked it. We both did not say anything. He got up and reached for it. That is when I noticed he was no more close to it. He put it back in the channel that was in, and he laid it down. All of a sudden, again, the television changes, but this time the DVR goes on, and we're both looking at it, and it is selecting programs to record. My husband looks at me, and I look at him. Then we both look at the remote, and which no one is touching. So we think he grabbed it and canceled the program, and that was going to get him to get recorded. But then he noticed that there had already been a few kids programs that were set up to record, which my kids don't know how to do it, and we do not. Needless to mention, this has happened several times, including the night before last. At first, I thought that maybe the batteries were dead, but no batteries were going dead. And we were still setting up the program to record. It was very scary to see the television go through the screens all by itself. By Love Paranormal, entitled It's Not Over. Our next spooky story comes from an author, Ghost Seer, entitled A California Dead Zone Triangle of Trouble. Submitted 2008, October 28th, from the state of California, United States. It's really amazing how you can pick a place to live, and it turns out to actually be a bad idea. When we bought our land in Hawaii, we decided to keep our residence in California. The best option for us was to rent it out. The only problem with renting out your house, when you want to go back to visit family and friends, someone else has taken over your home, and you have no place to stay. This is when my mother-in-law stepped in. She offered us an empty condo to use, and we were thrilled to have a place to go. And I really didn't miss our old house. Anyway, the rental income was helping us to pay our mortgage in Hawaii. The condo we were offered was in a strange area. Have you ever driven into an area, and as soon as you get to a certain point, you say, "Whoa, I feel kind of weird"? Well, this is where it all began, with the feeling like the ground was about to fall out from beneath. I'm not exaggerating. You could hear the rumble of the trolley, and the trains would blow their whistles come sundown. It was a catastrophe of ruckus gone wild. The condo is a cute little place, 3 bedrooms, about the size of a large closet. A kitchen that feels more like a galley on a small boat. It was built in the 1950s, so it wasn't in the greatest of shape, and it smelled funny, kind of like fermenting, rotting fruit. I guess I wasn't too thrilled moving, but it was free, and you couldn't beat that. 2 highways surround the neighborhood, and it is under the flight path. Every few minutes, a plane flies over, and the hum of freeway noise, well, it never stops. I was worried that the stimulation would be a bit too much for me to handle, and I tried to tune it out. Some of the visitations, I tell you, it wasn't easy. Day in and day out, I was inundated with nighttime visitors, not of the physical world, but the spiritual. First night I was there, I had the ghost of an elderly lady, dressed in nothing but a dirty nightgown, staring at me. I told her to go away and turned over. You see, I have these gifts of being able to ascertain the otherworldly and their antics, as this condo appeared to be crawling with the supernatural. Only it wasn't just the condo. It appeared this whole neighborhood was haunted. I tried ta- I tried taking walks around the block, but the dead, they were everywhere. Lots of overdoses, lots of alcohol poisonings. I remember thinking, this area is ran by the deceased. I was accosted in the shower by a deceased granny who happened to wander by a chipped coffee cup in her hand. Her scruffy slippers seemed to grip her attention, and she kept reaching down to pet and smooth the fuzzy material. She glared at me, and with an intensity of confusion. I kept bathing, though, staring back at her. I don't know what else to do, so I continued standing there, soaking wet under the flowing shower head, as naked as a newborn bird. She bent down one last time to pet her slippers, and off she went, fading away with each step. This is a daily occurrence, and I'm getting really drained. Then my husband told me the condo community was filled with elderly residents, and it was an area homeless transients felt safe. Lucky me. Transients, the homeless, planes flying directly overhead, the trolley and the trains going by. It was no wonder I was feeling so odd. This triangle area, kind of like the Bermuda Triangle, only worse. I was drowning in a tidal wave of supernatural activity. I've been attacked by entities still clinging to the mental illness they suffered in their life. One wild-eyed woman followed me around the condo and hauled off and hit me in the face. It was very faint, not a full hit. Luckily, she lost interest in me after that, when another entity was wandering through the middle of the living room. This next ghost appeared to be a middle-aged lady, well-dressed, but non-speaking. She acted like she was supposed to be there, and she sat down on the edge of the leather couch. Our TV was showing a soap, and she sat down to watch it a bit. She smoothed her skirt with a well-manicured hand and faded out of sight. I've been a bit on my behind by a lecherous old man, deceased of course, scratched down both arms, slapped, pushed, and pinched. Funny thing is, I'm not afraid of these traveling ghosts. I just limit my time in the condo when I go back for a visit. It's hard to relax in an environment like that. But I'm not there that much, so I can handle it. In conclusion, no matter where you go, there will always be dead zones like this. As a sensitive, I kind of got thrown into the fire, but I will survive, scars and all. The end. Very well. That was a good one. I like that one. California Dead Zone, Triangle of Trouble. Very interesting. All right. Next one, entitled Leaving Old Castle. Submitted by Leanne Scott 999, July 10th, 2008, entitled Leaving Old Castle. Over the past few weeks, I've moved out of Old Castle into my own place with my partner and daughter. About a week before I moved out, I was in the kitchen, in the original part of the house, with my brother Christopher. We were watching something on TV. On top of the TV was my mobile phone. Suddenly, my mobile flew off the top of the TV and landed at Chris's feet. We just looked at each other, and he started to laugh and say a few words that I won't tie upon here. At first, I thought maybe the vibrations caused by the volume of the TV had knocked the mobile off, but the thing is, Christopher was sitting at least 3 meters from the TV, and the phone didn't just simply slide off and drop to the floor. It literally flew over the room. Just in case, though, I picked up my mobile and put it back on top of the TV to see if the same thing would happen again. It didn't. So I got up, went over to the TV, and pushed the phone off, as I thought it dropped to the floor just in front of the TV. During the last week, I also kept getting poked in the side of my shoulder. Although, I have to admit, due to my kidney problem, I've dismissed things as anything supernatural. Even though the poking in my shoulder wouldn't be from my kidney problem, right? Last week, my mom and the rest of the family moved out of the property as well. Me and my partner also helped them move. Whilst waiting on the drive for my mom to come back with the moving van, my partner had parked out car at the angle in front of the kitchen window. We were talking in the car when suddenly I felt uncomfortable. Looking up, I saw a shadow standing a bit back from the window. But no one was in the house and the kitchen was completely empty. As we moved all the stuff from the previous day, I'm sorry, guys. As we moved all the stuff from the previous day, I quickly looked away. My partner, seeing this, asked what was wrong. I told him that I could see a shadow of someone in the kitchen. He decided to get out of the car and look through the window. There's no one in there. But as I looked up, I could still see it. My partner thinks I'm crazy, and I insist there was nothing in the kitchen. He insists there was nothing in the kitchen. He has never believed in the supernatural, although he has had experiences since living with me. Maybe I didn't see anything in the kitchen, though. It could have been the angle I was sitting at, although it did have a human shape to it. Submitted by Leanne Scott. Some sort of figure in a shadow. It's a classic story for sure. Classic story. Next one's entitled Mischief Maker by a Shadow Dancer. Submitted April 19th, 2011. California, United States. Mischief Maker. I've been living in the same house for 9 years now, and the weird things have been happening since my family moved into the home. We have a 4-bedroom, 2-story house, and there are 7 of us living in it. I live upstairs in the attic, which is by far the one room in the entire house that gets the most activity. Loud footsteps can be heard walking across the floor. Books and mirrors will get knocked over. Other things will be misplaced and lost for days and show up in the oddest of places. Well, one day my dad had come home from work early for lunch and no one else was home. He said that before walking into the house he got chills and something made him look up at my bedroom window. He told me that there was a young man with black hair looking down at him as if he was giving my dad this disgusted look. Now my dad is no chicken. He quickly entered our house, thinking that this intruder had just broken in. running straight up the stairs to confront the stranger. My dad had walked into my room to find no one was there. At first, he was perplexed and looked around to see if the man was hiding somewhere in my room, but he couldn't find any trace of another person, nor could he find anything missing. Perplexed, he was going to check if the man had somehow slipped past him and hid somewhere else in the house. But when he turned to walk out of my room, my bedroom door shut in his face. He couldn't get the door open, and my books fell off the bookshelf. He panicked and tried to pry my door open. And when it finally did open, he said that he ran out and slammed it behind it. My dad ran right out back of the house into his truck, and when he looked back up at my window, the man was there again, with an amused smirk on his face. My dad stayed in the driveway until my mom and I got home. He told us what had happened. I was skeptical of his story and walked up to my room boldly with my mom following me. We walked upstairs, and my mom noticed first my room had been trashed. I was astonished. It looked like a tornado had hit it. I really don't know what had happened that day in my bedroom, but it wasn't the first weird thing to happen in it. And I'm sure it won't be the last. Is anyone else out there experiencing anything like this? By Shadow Dancer, Mischief Maker, thank you. Interesting. Poltergeist style activity, huh? There's a lot of interesting stories that are tied into that kind of stuff. All right, the next one we're going to jump into going to be right over here. I just did this the other night, so I just want to make sure I don't accidentally click on anything that I might have. So, all right, the next one's called The Last Laugh by Cosmogal 926. Submitted November 8th, 2010. From New York, United States. The Last Laugh. In the summer of 2008, my husband Patrick and I were invited to a friend's house for a barbecue on Staten Island, New York. The house was in a new development on a cul-de-sac. The land was all forest before it was purchased and constructed into a quaint little community. All the houses were identical in structure and connected together with an attached apartment downstairs for the renting. The house was still newly built, and our friends barely had enough furniture to fill up their rooms. My husband and I were offered one of the bedrooms upstairs so we could enjoy ourselves at the barbecue and not have to worry about driving home late at night. As we were sitting around eating and enjoying the day, my friend began telling us about a woman who lives across the street. Let's just call her Jane. And how she swears that she's in a relationship with a spirit of a man. She went on to say that Jane believes he was a fireman who died in the line of duty. But the weird part is that he didn't live anywhere near the area, and she didn't know him when he was alive. Jane claims that he showed up in her apartment one night and just never left. My friend went on to tell us that Jane constantly talks about him like he is her boyfriend and that the relationship is real. Well, of course, everybody expressed their disbelief, and some claimed she was crazy and just desperate for attention. I didn't add any comments on my own because I never met the woman, and to be honest, I really don't know what to think, let alone say anything about her. So I just sat there listening to them joke and laugh about their neighbor. Later on that night, when the party started to wind down and the last of the guests went home, we all decided it was time to turn in. My husband was in the living room watching TV, and our friend said goodnight and headed up to bed. I grabbed my bag and told Patrick that I was going up to change and to get ready for bed. He said he'd be up in a few minutes because he wanted to watch the end of some movie. So I went up, changed, and settled down into bed. A little while later, I was woken up by the sound of footsteps coming into the room. I was lying on my side and my back to the bedroom door, and I thought that Pat finally decided to come up to bed. I heard the footsteps come up right to the side of me. I then felt two hands press down on my hip and start shaking me back and forth. While I was being shook, I heard a high-pitched giggle. It sounded like the kind of giggle a clown would make. So now I'm thinking, great. It's the middle of the night. My husband is drunk and going to wake up the whole house. So with me still lying in the same position, I opened my eyes. The room was dark. I could barely see a thing. Without bothering to turn towards my husband, I just said in an annoyed voice, "Patrick, cut it out. Get in bed, all right?" The shaking and giggling stopped. I heard him turn away and walk back out the door. I figured he was going out to the bathroom, and I must have fallen asleep because the next time I opened my eyes, it was morning. My husband wasn't in bed, so I thought he got up early, and I wanted to get on the road before traffic. I got up, went downstairs, and there was Patrick sound asleep on the couch. I woke him up and asked him why he came back down the stairs to sleep on the couch when he was at bed. He had no idea what I was talking about. He told me he never even came upstairs. He must have fallen asleep watching TV. I said, "Yeah, you did. Don't you remember walking into the bedroom, shaking me and giggling like a weird circus clown?" Well, he looked at me like I had two heads and said, "Jen, I'm telling you, I never came upstairs last night." So I started to think, well, if it wasn't Pat, then... my thoughts immediately went to my friend's neighbor and what was told to me the night before. When my friend came downstairs, she asked how I slept. I told her I slept well, except for the fact I think her neighbor's boyfriend came to visit me. She said, "What?" I told my husband and friend what happened, and that seems Jane was telling the truth. The spirit probably didn't appreciate all the laughing and joking around and decided that he was going to get the last laugh. My friend's face was priceless, and Pat just stood there shaking his head, insisting that I was dreaming. But I know I wasn't. My friend never had any experiences in the house and still doesn't. She doesn't talk about Jane anymore. We have been to the house several times too after the experience and even spent the night, but nothing else ever happened. I did end up meeting Jane once. I just smiled and made polite conversation with her. Thank you for reading. Submitted by Cosmo Gal, The Last Laugh. So some weird ghost just kind of came up and shook her and giggled like a creepy clown. So was it the boyfriend ghost? Could be. This one's entitled, My Brother is Experiencing a Poltergeist. Submitted by Derek15. October 23rd, 2007. State of California, United States. My brother is experiencing a poltergeist. As you may know, I recently wrote a story about my experience in my brother's old apartment last summer. This time, it's not me who's experiencing things. It's my brother. It's in his new apartment, just blocks from the one where I experienced what may have been his landlady's dad's spirit. We think this new one in his apartment is a poltergeist, but we're not quite sure. Hopefully some of you can help explain this. Let's start with what my brother calls his bed scare. This happened to him about 2 weeks ago. He had been through a pretty eventful day with his new job. He decided to play all the day's events back through his mind over sleep. As he was lying in bed, he felt the hair stand up on his arms and the back of his neck. He started having feelings that he wasn't alone. Then, before he knew it, he felt something creep up from the end of his bed and lie next to him. He froze in terror. He couldn't actually feel its breathing, but he could feel it moving around. Then he got up enough courage to tell it to leave. A few seconds after that, the breathing in his ear stopped. He no longer felt that he wasn't alone, and the whole atmosphere changed back to normal. Some other poltergeist-like activity started occurring about 4 days after that. He came home from work and found that all the pillows on his couch had been set down on the ground, all lined up in a neat fashion. He also found all of his lamps and lights were on, as well as all the ceiling fans in his rooms. He told me that he makes sure that everything is picked up and turned off before he leaves for work, and he is very sure that he turned everything off and picked everything up that morning before work. The same thing happened the next day, and then suddenly ceased. Another minor thing, that he would be sitting down eating dinner in his living room watching TV, and the TV would turn off. It would be off for a minute or two, then it would turn back on. This happened several times, and he made sure that no one shorted a break or anything like that. One night when this happened, he finally got so mad that he said loudly, "Turn it back on, please!" He told me that not even a second after that, the TV turned right back on. All of the activity ceased for about 2 weeks until 2 mornings ago when he had another bed scare. And it happened the same way the first one did. I was just wondering if any of you had any idea what that is. We think that it might be poltergeist created by all of this tension and stress and negative energy, but we're not sure. Thank you so much. Interesting. My brother's experiencing a poltergeist. The creepy breathing in your ear, but you don't feel it. I find it interesting they're studied up enough on the poltergeist to think that it actually may be him. It could very well could be. Good story. Thank you. My Doll Friend is the name of the next one. By Snow Angel. Submitted May 26, 2007 from Canada. My Doll Friend. I got a doll at the age of 6. It was from a garage sale. I don't know who it belonged to or anything. I only know that I loved it from the first time I got it. I always carried it everywhere with me. One day, I wished it would come to life and be my friend for real. That doll was like my only possession. I always had her with me, and I never let go of her. That night I fell asleep wishing that, and the next day, when I woke up, I noticed that my doll wasn't beside me anymore. Usually, I would sleep beside it every night. I thought it was my mom or dad that put it away or something. So I looked for her and found her in my toy box. I then went on to play with her, and since it was only the morning and I was still a bit tired, I went into bed and laid her beside me. I covered myself with a cover and covered her with the same one. I pulled her close, and then I closed my eyes. I felt something touching my leg. I'm having a technical issue, of course. There we go. Sorry, guys. Revenue's getting all good, too. I'm trying to, I guess this is from the point of view of a little girl. All right, I covered myself with the covers and covered her with the same one. I pulled her close, and then I closed my little eyes. I felt something touching my leg and moving up and down as if it was rubbing it. I looked at my doll, and her head was turned to me. Of course, that was because I left her that way. So I still felt something touching me and pulled my covers off and screamed. My doll's leg was moving on mine. I screamed at the top of my lungs, and my parents both woke up and rushed into my room. I told them what happened, and they never believed me. You probably won't, but I know what I experienced, and I'll never forget it. I still have the doll in a box somewhere. I keep it as a memory. Hope you enjoyed the reading from Snow Angel, my doll friend. Weird. Thank you. That was a weird one. Okay, let's jump into something a little different. All right, here we go. The Little Laughing Girl by Coco Loco 1234. Submitted 2011, December 20th from Ireland. The Little Laughing Girl. This story starts about 10:30 p.m. in Ireland. I was in my bedroom in my old house. I moved somewhere else in May, but not because of this experience. I was trying to get sleep and I just couldn't. I was looking around my room trying to wind down. But what I heard next certainly did not help me get to sleep. From outside the door of my room, I heard a loud giggle. It sounded as if it was made by a little girl. But there were no young children in my house or outside at the time. This sounds kind of weird though. I got this mental picture of this little girl. Is that normal? She was about 3 or 4 years old and had dark shoulder hair length and a fringe. It also seemed as if she was either with some friends or playing with toys. The laughter got louder, and I got freaked out. It eventually stopped, and after a while, I fell asleep. Come on. Leaving everybody on the edge. I'm here, still here. Hold on. My computer is being a little ghost girl. Okay, the laughter got louder and I got freaked out, and eventually it stopped, and then I was able to fall asleep. The next morning, I told my mom all about it. Though she believes in ghosts because her father, my grandfather, was a psychic, and sometimes we both are a little bit psychic too. She brushed it off as nothing. It seemed out of character for my mom. But the other morning in our new house, she told me, and I know it wasn't a lie because she knows how much I am interested in the paranormal, that about a week before I heard the little girl laughing, she had a dream about a little girl of about 3 or 4 with dark shoulder length hair and a fringe. And she came to her while she was sleeping. She didn't really mention whether she was seeing herself in the dream or was it her in the dream. Was she trying to speak to her? But she did say it was almost like she couldn't say hello to her, like she was trying to, but just couldn't. And the weirdest part of it all was I hadn't told her what my mental image of the little girl was. Yeah, the laughing little girl came to visit somebody. It sounds almost banshee-esque. Any sort of visits like that are starting to really remind me of banshees. The Legless Man in the Cemetery by Empty Walls. I came across this website recently, and I figured this could be a good place to tell about my experiences, which I had about 10 years ago. The majority of my family lives in northwestern Minnesota, and I live in Minneapolis at the time with my immediate family. We would go visit my family up north a couple times each summer and do things like hunting, fishing, go off-roading with ATVs and other such fabulous things. Oftentimes, me and my cousin would go off-roading in our ATVs in an area west of a town called Thief River Falls. It's mostly farmland, some forest plots, highways, a few farms, and houses along with some gravel roads. One summer evening around 7 p.m., I was out with my cousin on our ATVs, and the radio which he had on the ATV was set to the National Weather Channel, which was saying that a severe thunderstorm warning was issued for the Pentagon County, the county in which we were in. and it was scheduled to arrive in about half an hour. Since he lived about 10 miles south of where we currently were at that point, we decided to start making our way back before the storm hit. About 5 minutes later, we decided to stop right by an old empty cemetery, a church situated about 50 yards ahead. And on the right side of us was on the road, and to look at the granite, uh, we could see a giant cumulus cloud quickly moving in above us. By this point, the sky started to get a little dark, and we could hear the thunder starting to rumble. But we figured we had enough time to kill before the storm arrived. A couple moments after we stopped, I started getting this odd, strange feeling. The best way I could describe it is if it was like someone was watching us. In fact, I even checked all around me out of instinct, but there was no one there except for us two. I then heard my cousin fire up his ATV, telling me that we should get going. I started up my ATV as well and proceeded to follow him, but I still had the strange feeling that I was being watched. As we got closer to the cemetery, I started to slow down because that feeling I was having was getting stronger and stronger. As I passed the cemetery gate, I see a man in his 50s or 60s wearing a white short-sleeved button-up shirt and a pair of black slacks standing next to a grave looking south direction, which is the same direction we were heading. However, I quickly noticed that his legs were missing from his knees downward. I immediately hit the brakes as I could not believe what I was seeing. He then turned his head just to look at me, and I will never forget that scornful look he had on his face as he stared at me for those few seconds. As he stared at me, I started getting this cold, clammy feeling that one usually gets when scared. After a few seconds, he starts to slowly float towards me, at which point I gunned it and I got out of there as quickly as I could. When I checked my rearview mirrors, I didn't see anyone or anything behind me, but I wasn't going to wait around to find out. My cousin noticed I had stopped and was waiting for me about a quarter of a mile up the road where I had stopped. I lied to him that I had just seen a deer run across the cemetery and I was watching them frolic about. That night I couldn't get sleep because I kept thinking about that legless man. That crazy legless man who was standing over me. That's what I kept thinking all night. From that point on, whenever I visited, I always made sure to never go by that cemetery ever again, because I'm honest to God afraid that he will follow me home if I go by there again. The legless man in the cemetery. This one is entitled My First Ever Paranormal Experience by Samantha S. Blue. Okay, when I was about 12, I would always stay up late with my older sister and cousin during the summer vacations. We would always just hang out in my sister's room, play board games, and talk until the sun came up. But one night, everything changed. All three of us were playing Monopoly at 2 in the morning, and someone lightly knocked on our door 3 times. My cousin got up to check, but there was nobody there, so we continued playing. About 30 minutes later, again, we heard 3 light knocks. This time, I got up to check, and nobody was inside. I went to my younger sister's room to check if she was the one knocking and trying to scare us, but she was deep asleep. As I was walking back, I heard a loud crash. I looked back. My fireplace protector was on the ground. I stood there in shock because there was no way a heavy thing like this could slam to the floor by itself. I quickly ran to my sister and cousin and told them what happened. They were horrified. We just tried to ignore it though and continue playing Monopoly. That was my first ever paranormal experience. Weeks later, nothing else happened until one night. That night was the scariest experience I have ever had. My sister and cousin were laying on the bed, and I was laying down opposite of them near their feet. It was pretty dark in the room, but my sister's charger lit up the room. My sister and I were arguing because she wanted to sleep in the room, but I didn't want to go because I was scared to sleep alone. We then continued arguing, and it suddenly got silent for some odd reason. I looked over to see why my sister was so silent, and of course she was on her phone. But from the corner of my eye, I saw something move. I looked to see what it was, and my sister's drawers were slowly opening one by one by one. I put the covers over my head, and I told my sister and cousin that the drawers were opening. They both looked, and they were motionless. We were all silent. I could hear my cousin crying in fear. Sweat started pouring down my back and neck, and I wanted to let out a scream, but I was so horrified I couldn't. We all quickly jumped off the bed and ran out of the room crying. My dad woke up, and we told him what happened. He went to go check, and he said all the drawers were perfectly open the same way. We have no idea how that happened or what caused the drawers to open, and it is still unexplained. Interesting. My first ever paranormal experience by Samantha S. Blue. All right. My Own Poltergeist by Kaylee. This experience is not for the ones who are scared of ghosts. I was a teen, and my mom and I got into an argument. I told her not to listen. I told her not to close my door and turn out the light. She does it anyway. I'm sitting under my blanket, and all of a sudden it flies off of me. I pull it back on, and something hits me in my face. My little brother, 12 at the time, came in and asked me if I was okay. I was screaming. He took a look at my face. The right side was a maroon handprint, twice the size of mine. He got my mom. He said to cut out the crap. The next day in my algebra class, I was set up against the wall of my desk, and all of a sudden I felt something breathing on my neck. I looked above me, and the air vent was on the other side of the room. That night, I fell asleep. At 1 a.m., I woke up feeling very cold. I opened my eyes, and I could see my breath. Next thing I knew, my favorite stuffed animal was grabbed out of my arms. I started crying. Next thing I knew, my arms were being scratched by a fork. How the fork got up there, I don't know. I wore a jacket to color guard next day, and the scratches that bled profusely the night before went away. Not even traces of scabs. The next night, I was sleeping, and at the same time the night before, I felt cold. Again, I could see my breath. I looked next to me and saw a long imprint in my bed. I put the blanket over my head, and it flew off. Then, my figure started to flip my hair. I checked out a lot of books, and they were all coincidentally to me. For example, poltergeists usually revolve around one person. Secondly, they usually occur between the ages of 10 to 20. Lastly, the person it occurs to is usually either sad or angry. I was both. My own poltergeist by Kaylee. Thank you. This is fun. I need a sip of water real quick. My non existent written friends who wrote these that I will never meet. Thank you for writing these people. This is fun. I just need to take a sip of water. The next one is called The Little Black Figure. Just making an observation on the fly. Another female. There's a lot of female there right here. Looks like the dudes are a little scared to tell some of their stories. I know I've read some, but it seems like there's been a majority of females tonight. The Little Black Figure. Alright, yeah. He's not there. Alright, The Little Black Figure. My name is Tanya, and I am 21 years old. Ever since I was 7 years old, I've had many experiences with ghosts. And this is the latest one I've experienced. Last year, when I was just 20 years old, I was staying at my father-in-law's, and my husband and my little girl. She's 2 years old now, but when that happened, she would just turned 1. Well, ever since we moved to that house, I didn't feel comfortable. Too many negative vibes, and the house was way too dark. Well, every time I was alone in the house, I used to hear noises, like a baby crying, a baby's laugh, and once I even saw a really dark figure. One weekend, my grandma took my daughter to her house to spend the weekend with her, and my husband and me were alone in the room sleeping. While I was asleep, when I woke up about 2:30 a.m., I heard what sounded like a baby's musical mobile. It was weird because I didn't have my baby's crib in the house. I got up, and there was this little baby, about 2 years old, running out of the closet towards my bed. I freaked out by seeing the little black figure. I reached out to my husband to wake him, and as soon as I did this, the little baby grabbed my arm and nodded his head not to wake him up. I screamed so loud that my husband woke up and asked me what was wrong. I told him what I just seen, and I called my grandma to see how my daughter was doing. Thank God my baby was fine like an angel, so I just calmed myself down and went back to sleep. We finally moved out of there, and until this day, I still don't know what happened in the house. Yeah, I'll say it. Freaking creepy. I wouldn't want that happening to me. All right. Let's change it up just a wee bit here. Gonna select from a slightly different category now. I'm just gonna be bouncing around categories and stuff, guys. So I'm gonna do a Ouija talking board, a Ouija board one. All right. This one is simply entitled Ouija Boards by Mother Pan. I have been reading comments of Ouija board usage, and I thought I would post my experiences when I was younger. As a teen, I was given one for a present and used to have fun. I don't remember that we contacted spirits, but I was amazed how it moved on the board when we barely touched it. Years later, I was in my 20s. A friend of mine told me she thought her apartment was haunted. So one night we decided to see if we could confirm that, if it was really haunted or not. She told me that she would notice that the lights over the table would sway back and forth, and I did notice it moved slightly. But we were facing a main street, and I commented that maybe traffic could be causing it to swing. But after watching it for a while, it did move, and no cars were passing by. She said she saw a face in a bare light bulb in the living room, and if you stared at it for a while, I think you would see a face. There were other strange happenings, so we decided to use a Ouija board to see if we could contact someone or something. There were 3 of us that night. My friend, her sister-in-law, and me. Actually, if you want to get technical, I was pregnant with my daughter, so there was 4 souls there. When my friend and her sister-in-law tried to use the board, it would not move to answer any questions. But when I touched it, it would fly across the board and spell out messages. Well, I don't know if there was really a spirit there, because the full story came to me in my mind, and then I played it out on the board. I wondered if I was controlling it, making up a story that was in my head, or was I receiving a message before the board spelled it out? The story was about a poor maid that got pregnant by her employer and was kept captive in the attic of the house that we were in. And when she had the baby, they told her that it died, but they really took it from her and gave it away. We tried to look up history about this story, but there had been a fire that destroyed records from the time frame of the story. So we could never prove or disprove this story. One thing my friend questioned was why the board worked so well when I took hold, and in my mind, I thought because I was making up the story and controlling it. But the answer we got that I was of two souls, and it was easier to communicate through me. Needless to say, I let go, vowing never to use it again, because I was afraid for my unborn child. Ouija boards. Interesting. I don't think I've ever talked to somebody about the idea of talking boards while impregnated. Very interesting. Okay, so let's see the next one here. The Man Crossing the Street by Random Associate. I've told this story a few times. Most times people think I'm lying. But this is definitely true. Well, as far as I know, I was not hallucinating, and as my father witnessed this as well. So I know that it must have been real. 2.5 years ago, I was working shift. My dad would come pick me up every time I worked the 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. shifts. On this particular night, everything was just as it always was. I finished work, changed in the dormitory, met my dad in the car park. The drive home is about 15 minutes, less than that at this hour. It was about 11 p.m. because there's hardly any traffic on the road. So we were driving down the road, and there was a long, dark stretch for about 1.5 miles. And my dad was driving a bit fast. I looked straight ahead at the faint lights from the cars, and our way, and they were far out, coming towards us. As I glanced at those lights, I noticed that some way ahead there was what appeared to be a person standing on the opposite side of the road. I couldn't see him clearly, but I could make out that it was a man. I remember telling my dad that it looks like there's someone on the side of the road, but my father didn't even seem to hear me. All of a sudden, the car opposite us starts to come closer. I see the person is crossing the street. I still can't make out a face or anything. I remember raising my voice and telling my father that I think someone's crossing the street. He still does not pay any mind to me, and we drive straight through what looks like two bare legs. It takes about 5 minutes for my father to say something, because I was silent. I was in shock, because I wasn't sure about what I had just seen, and if my father had seen it too. He breaks the silence by saying, "You saw that?" I reply by asking if it looked like we drove through two legs. He confirms that he has seen what I have saw. The rest of the drive home, we go over the experience, and for days we do this. When I seldom bring up this topic, he is still in amazement that we both saw the same thing. Interesting. So you're really lucky it was a ghost and not a human. The paranormal supernatural experiences, whenever the same thing is witnessed by multiple people, that is just, that's something. Something. All right, I want to Ouija contacting strange demon by evil closed vortex. So as long as I can remember, I have been interested in Lucifer, the fallen angel. I have always felt haunted by something. Some experiences I've had were hearing my name when no one was around, being pinned onto my bed, having doors slammed around me, and my friend is heard breathing in my room when I was pinned down. My friend told me to use a Ouija board to contact the spirit. I heard of demons easily getting through, so I took my rosary and prayed to God, asking that He keep me safe as I contacted the entity that was in my home. I made my own Ouija board and I made contact. The following events happened. Is there anyone in the room with me? Yes. Are you a demon? Yes. Do you have bad intentions? No. Are you lying? Hesitation at first. Yes. What is your name? BAE10. Bay10? Is that your name? Yes. Oh, I don't know what's going on. The spooky stuff to Mike me tonight. Leave me hanging. I want to know what's going on. Bay10, is that your name? Yes. Are you the demon that was in my room the night I was pinned on my bed? No. Who was that demon? Give me the name. It began giving me complete gibberish. You're lying. That's not the name. There we go. Yes. Was it you who was breathing when my friend was in my room years ago? No. What is the name of that demon? Just a bunch of gibberish. Lies, demon, you're lying. Was it you who was breathing at her? Yes. Was it you who was slamming the doors of my house? Yes. What is your true name? No response. Are you afraid of me? Yes. Are you afraid of the cross? Yes. If I would put down a cross, would you still be afraid? Yes. Okay, do you know the fallen angel Lucifer? No. Are you the fallen angel Lucifer? The planchette begins going to yes, only to fall down off towards the board and answer goodbye. Some of the writing. I figured, okay, then goodbye. I banished the spirit in the name of God and went on my computer to kill some time. I felt a very strong pulling on my foot, and it was definite that this thing was talking to me while I was still there. I used the board again. I don't know what's going on with the script on the computer. I must be getting hacked. Thank you, whoever's hacking me. I love you for freaking loving me if you're hacking me, whatever this is. One moment. One tiddly diddly moment. I don't know what the hell the issue is. I'm just gonna hold on, guys. 30 seconds. I'm opening up a new page. My browser is being a pain in the arse. A pain in your arse. Pardon my French. That should be better. I'm starting a new story. I wasn't liking that one anyway. I think I'm gonna steer clear of those kind. That was I like it when the board and the person interact, but that was like just yes and no, like a real riveting yes, no, yes, no. Really, what are you gonna say next? Let me guess, yes or no. All right, so this is called Several Weird Events by Shadi Bado. I don't believe in ghosts, neither as the souls of the dead people nor an imprint of their consciousness. I do, however, believe in the jinn theory for how so many people experience so many different phenomena. That is, that either free or bound jinn influences the senses of susceptible people to give them hallucinations, or that a free jinn can alter the environment he calls home. I'm skeptical about the latter. I know this isn't crucial to the story, but I personally like to know what the storyteller thinks of the world before they describe an event. The first two could easily have been a dream or a manifestation of sleep paralysis. In college, I once awoke at around 11 a.m. to the loud sound of a tiger's growl just behind my head. I sat up quickly and turned around. There was nothing, of course. When I turned back, I saw a large soap bubble about the size of my fist floating in the room just before it popped. I thought it had floated in through the window, but the screen was down, and I was definitely awake. But my mind was fuzzy enough that it didn't scare me. It did give me a weird elation for the day. Twice that day, someone in the crowd shouted phrases I'd been thinking, and I mean odd phrases, as I had been writing a fantasy story at the time. So I was thinking Raven Reapers or Raven Knights as I walked down the streets deciding on a name, and I'd pass someone saying Raven Knights to someone else. Weird. During summer break, I used to enjoy napping on my mother's made bed. Her room didn't have any lights at the time, and it was always cooler and darker than the rest of the house, with more fresh air circulating. To one side, a tall, heavy drawer wardrobe thing dwarfed the rest of the furniture, and I'd go down looking through it in the linens or hand towels for Q-tips. One morning, I got out of bed, crossed the hall, and hopped into her, vacant at the time, bed because it was much more comfortable. I don't remember waking up from sleep, but I must have, because when I opened my eyes, I saw movement from the corner of my room on top of the dresser. I craned my head to get a better look, the rest of the body flaccid, as if still asleep. What I saw horrified me, and although I haven't said anything, I am sure that it was some kind of dream. I don't take naps in her bed anymore. Sitting on top, a tall dresser wardrobe thing, was one of those crazy wind-up monkey dolls, the one with the bared teeth, vacant stare, and crashing cymbals. It was perched on the edge of a dresser, bashing its cymbals in total surreal silence. I was paralyzed for a moment, and then shook my head, and it was gone. I don't even think I woke up afterwards, but simply got out of bed. I don't see things, even when afraid. I don't feel presences or anything like that. I'm just afraid of being alone in places that feel abandoned and empty because it feels like I'm not supposed to be there, even if it's a bedroom in my own house. The final mini event occurred outside at a major university. I had been describing a reoccurring nightmare to one of my friends while visiting him, and the visit went pretty late. I'd walked with him across campus to his house, and now my car was about a half mile away. I think it was about 2 a.m., and I started on my way. I crossed the street, walked past some building construction, a football stadium, through a parking lot, and then onto another sidewalk in front of construction. College towns are rowdy at night, but the college campus was utterly devoid of life. The buses weren't moving, and there was no dorm buildings around. I was passing a rather pathetic-looking construction site when it happened. A couple low fences, a ribbon, a 30 yards separated from me from what looked like a concrete facade and foundation. That is, they'd only finished two sides of this tiny building, leaving the other two open to the elements. I could see workbenches and tools scattered around on the ground from a distance, but as I got closer, I could only see large dark windows on a front wall. Now remember, it's 2 in the morning, and there are no lights on, in, or around this tiny one-room, half-finished building. I'm the only person on campus. There aren't even cars passing by or lights on in any of the buildings. There was a street lamp in the distance and moonlight, and that was it. Just as I passed in front of the building, though, there was a sudden sound of construction, loud and obnoxious and frantic. The sounds of hammering, as if two people were hammering different surfaces out of sync. And it just wouldn't stop. I couldn't see inside from the front, but the windows were still pitch black, and the building was tiny and quite close. Who would be in there hammering away at 2 a.m., waiting for one guy on campus to walk by? It stopped only after I'd left the building and didn't resume. The sound was loud enough that had I known of it, continued, but it didn't. Okay, that was a weird ending. Thank you. That was a good story. I like that one, actually. Weird ending. That's the guy. That's exactly how he ended it right there. It stopped only after I left it behind, and it didn't resume. The sound was loud enough that I'd have known of it continued, but it didn't. So I think he messed up the ending on that a little. Other than that, it was a good story. Feels like I'm reading that wrong. That was weird. Shadow. Bye. Oh, come on. Don't be like this. Here, hold on. I'm going to pick a different category, actually, guys. And then after this story, I got to take a 3-minute break, and then I will be back. Just going to just let this creepy music play. Yeah, here we go. I Think They Follow Us by Miami Life 94. My name is Miami. For a while now, me and my family have experienced a lot of ghost-like situations in which my sister, mother, and I have all seen things that cannot be explained. We have moved due to the different complications, but it never fails. It always feels like we aren't the only ones living in our homes or always being watched. A few years ago, we rented out this house that we really didn't do research on the property. Nothing really happened at first, but a few months after settling in, we knew that we were not the only ones living there. My sister, who was 5 years younger than I, would complain that she heard voices and seen shadows like things walking through the walls or from the corner of her eye. My youngest sister had an imaginary friend who turned out to be evil. He said her name was Gatus. My sister would say wild things like Gatus would say, "Gatus wants you to kill you." We later found out from a neighbor who has lived next door for like 30 years that a male had passed away in our house. Myself personally have been woken up by this man, which his old room was my room. He was turning on and off my TV. After a few times, he was standing in the doorway and said, "Okay, I'll let you sleep now," and walked out of my room. I moved out with my husband, who isn't really into this kind of thing, so he always thinks that I'm overthinking and that I watch too many movies. At our apartment, when my husband would be at work, I once again started feeling like something's watching me. One night, I was asleep and woke up to this little girl in my room. As soon as she sees me awake, she runs out of the room. This is the second time I've seen her. Me and my husband move into the room, or into my mom's new house to help around when she works nights. The whole house feels the same thing as the previous house. My husband and I move back with my mom to help her with my sister while she works nights. We always see shadows and see things from the corner of the eyes. We hear voices and people walking around the houses and playing the stairs. Last night, for example, my mom got home around 12 a.m. and I was still awake. My younger sisters were asleep and my husband is out to sea. I sat in the living room with my mom and I heard a knock at the door. I looked and seen a shadow walk past. My mom didn't see it first and claimed that I was bugging out. She checked and there was nothing out there. I went to sleep and about an hour later, my mom hears the same knocking at the door 3 times and was too scared to check. Our dog also stares at things and seems like she gets stuck. And we can never figure out what has got her attention. My question to anybody willing to answer or reply: could this thing have followed us? Is this something we should be worried about? And has anybody been through something similar? Could it be that just my family has a special eye for this thing? Intriguing. I think they follow us was the name of that. Alright guys, I need a 2 to 3 minute break. I will be right back, not too long. Just listen to creepy music. I'll be back. Alright, guys, let's get back to another one. This one's called A Haunted House by Ghost Seer. As a young girl, we moved around quite a bit. Eventually moved away from the tropics and headed to California. When we first moved to the United States from the Canal Zone, it was strange to see how close together the homes were built. We moved into a new development called Santee Lakes, and a new home. We're surrounded by older neighborhoods. I love the house in our neighborhood as we overlooked a huge canyon. At nighttime, we would sit outside and stare into the blackness. Being that there were no lights to block out the stars in the night sky, we saw every single falling star. It felt magical sitting there under the star-filled sky. It happened when I was 6 years old. The apparition came at me in the dark of the night. My parents hadn't come outside yet, and Mother was cleaning up the kitchen after dinner. Dad was overseeing my brothers and sisters, and I had snuck outside. I always felt better outside. I don't know why, I just did. A big family has a lot of chaos, and mine was big and loud. Dad was always singing, and somebody was always calling out. It never seemed to be quiet in my home. Sitting outside, I was relieved no one had noticed I was missing. I felt so nice to be in the dark, in the solitude, even if it was just sitting Even if it was just sitting out for a few minutes. I wandered over to the edge of our yard and I looked down into the vast valley. There were always things moving around down there, but I always assumed it was just animals because there were rabbits and squirrels around and lots of birds. I saw the face floating above the grove of small trees. The trees were around a quarter mile below, and I thought it was an owl at first. It floated towards me, and I could see the beginnings of a neck and arm and hips. The ghost was dressed in a flowing, pale blue gown. I saw that she had a cotton hat and lace around the edges. It tied into a bow under her chin. As the apparition grew closer, I saw she was a little girl, maybe a bit older than myself. She smiled at me and just floated right past. I remember being frozen to the spot. She went into my house and was gone from sight in a minute. I walked for a minute or two, but she didn't come back. Running into the house, I looked for her. Normal stuff was still going on, and no one had seen her, I guess. I didn't say a word to anyone, but my dad asked me who I was looking for. I didn't answer him as I pulled open closet doors and ran through all the bedrooms. But when I was convinced she wasn't hiding, I gave up my search. Everybody started to go outside, and I was the last one out the door. I was determined to find the girl. She didn't reappear until my bedtime. I saw her playing with some of my toys on the floor. I sat up in bed, and she faded away. We only lived in this house for a couple of years, but the ghost showed herself to me at least once a week. She traveled from the valley to my house almost weekly. I wonder if she was buried there. I was looking through the history books one day and I saw a picture of children dressed and running alongside wagon trains, back in the prairie old days when people headed west. Maybe this little girl was from that era. I will never know. I went up to the area a few years back. The whole area was overdeveloped. Homes now filled the valley, and our old home looks so different. I hope and prayed she was at rest now. Who knows? Maybe she still haunts the old house. Blessings. Go see her. Huh. A haunted house story. All right, next one's called A Painful Death by Snow Angel. I have some freaky dreams about spirits sometimes. Some might have tried telling me something, but I really don't know. Well, one was about some man that I'd never seen and had rested in peace because they had killed their own father somewhere by a railroad a few years back. It's as if I was that person and I had a flashback and I was reliving that moment where I stabbed my own father, the spirit's father. God, it felt so disgusting and so real. It's as if I would have planted a knife for real into the person's heart and slowly pulled it out to replant it back into their chest. It felt so gross. It was real to me. I remember one name, but I don't know if it was my father's name or the man's name. I know the name was said about 4 or 5 times repeatedly before I woke up, so I couldn't have forgotten it. That dream took place by the railroad, where the train would pass years back. I had no idea who that person was, but I knew I saw their face, but I can't clearly remember it. But I remember a few details. When I woke up in sweat. It felt so real. I'm gonna go and try to do some research and see if this person truly lived here and who it was. I know it was someone. I could have never made them up or the situation. I'll inform you guys about this after I see some phone books and after I search Google a bit. I knew it was someone. If I never find anything about them, I'll know that that dream still meant something. I just wish I knew what. That was a good one. I like that one. Thank you. A Premonition of Death by Cursed by Death. Let's sip of coffee real quick. Alright, A Premonition of Death. I have a long history of seeing black apparitions prior to someone's death, but I had never seen this figure prior to the death of someone close to me until this instance. Arriving at work one Friday morning, having just parked my car, I was busy gathering my belongings when I looked up and saw a dark apparition manifest directly in front of my vehicle. I could make out the gender and some facial details of this transparent being. Struck with fear, I could not look directly at it. I turned away, not believing what I was seeing. I had never seen this figure at such a close distance. My heart raced as my mind searched for an explanation. When I got the nerve to look up, it was gone. Knowing that I had previously seen this figure prior to someone's death, I tried to determine who it was that was about to die. My oldest brother Lou and his family were in town visiting, so I immediately jumped to the conclusion that it was he that would die. On Saturday, I received a call from my parents inviting me to have brunch with my brother's family prior to their departure the following day. Fearing that this would be the last opportunity to spend with my oldest brother, I agreed to join them. On Sunday, I received a call from my best friend Dave asking me to join him in testing his son's go-kart that he just received from the shop. He wanted to test it before allowing his son to drive it. I explained to him that my brother was in town and that I had made some prior commitments. I promised that I would call him immediately afterward. Upon arriving home, after having brunch with my brother and his family, my wife explained that Dave had been in an accident and told me that Dave's wife wanted to call me as soon as I got home. My heart dropped and I feared the worst. When I called Dave's wife, she explained that Dave had been in a horrible accident and feared that he would not survive. I raced to the hospital, not believing what was happening. We waited at the hospital until late that night, only to hear that my best friend had passed away. I wonder if I could have prevented Dave's accident, if I would have guessed that he would have been the one to pass away and not my brother. This one is titled A Story to Tell by Silver Wind. This is my first post that I've done on this site. It's not like some of the other stories I've read here. Anyway, my story begins with a short explanation on how I became a psychic. I'm still trying to develop my abilities. I have always wanted to tell my experiences to some of my friends, but thought better of it because they might think I'm crazy or have a very creative imagination. I was at my friend's sleepover. She had a Ouija board and decided to make contact. She asked questions like, "Is there anyone here with us?" and so on. We waited for about 2 minutes with no response. Then the pointer moved by itself, without any of us putting force on it. I couldn't believe what was happening. It was my first time trying this out. My friend asked, "What's your name?" The pointer started to move slowly, spelling N-O-M, which was the spirit's name. The spirit was nice. He liked to mess with us. He was kind of a prankster. Finally, the day ended and I went home. I was still excited about what happened, so I got a crazy idea of making my own Ouija board. To my amazement, Nam followed me home. After a couple weeks of using the Ouija board, I started to hear voices in my head. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Then I started to hear random conversations in my head. I said hi in my mind, and the conversation stopped. And I felt as if there were people looking at me. I know it sounds weird to hear voices in your head, but that's how I can explain this whole psychic thing. So I stopped using the board. I followed my regular schedule of going to school. I realized that Nam had been following me all this time without me knowing it. I became accustomed to this as the days went by. Days turned to weeks. I didn't tell my friends about me being psychic because they might think I'm crazy, or because of their religious views. In school, everyone started to know me as a psychic, and I would listen to what they have to say. If you know what I mean. Sometimes it made me laugh, and I made them laugh too. I can be sarcastic at times. Being a psychic changed my life dramatically. Even before I became a psychic, I had my own paranormal experiences like seeing shadows and white figures. After I gained my psychic ability, my experiences haven't changed much, except that at school I get teased by some very playful spirits. They tend to softly shake my desk and laugh every time I get annoyed by it. Then there's a time I was watching a paranormal show on TV, and the commercial came on, and I looked at my bathroom, which is right across the hall from my room, and I saw a floating orb fly across from one point to another. I've never seen a floating orb before, so I stayed in shock for a bit. Another experience I've had was when I was at the mall with my parents. I've always let them have their space, so I followed behind them. As I keep on walking, I felt something trip me, but luckily I didn't fall. I actually felt the force of whatever I tripped on, the bottom of my shoe. Instinct told me to retrace my steps. I came to the conclusion I couldn't have tripped over anything because there was nothing on the floor. It was marble tile floor. I could feel the object of whatever made me trip on the bottom of my shoe for a while. I just felt like writing this because I don't want my family and friends to think I have imaginary friends. I know a lot of people don't believe in this kind of stuff, but it's nice to know that some people are willing to listen to your experiences. So thank you for taking the time to read my story. All right, next one is going to be entitled Are You Still Awake by Winter Azazel. So after I posted my first story, I told my little brother a little more about the site and its purpose. After hearing about it, generally positive and encouraging the comments on my other story, he requested I tell one of his many experiences. He's hoping that the members here can shine some light on an experience that occurred almost 5 years ago, yet to this day still perplexes and discomforts him. Now, in the case you haven't read my other story, I feel I should include that my brother is highly sensitive to spirits, along with myself. We were the only people in our family so far to have the ability to see the deceased. However, my brother seems to attract more harmful spirits than myself. Our mother can communicate with the deceased through photos, but has never actually seen a spirit. Lastly, our father has occasionally contact with spirits, but they are brief and sporadic. My three other siblings have not indicated being sensitive, and in fact are very scared of the paranormal despite never having claimed to see anything strange. Around 5 years ago, my family and I lived in Georgia. We were renting a cute little 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, though it was not necessarily in the best part of town, if you catch my drift. It wasn't sketchy or ghetto exactly, just a little bit of the lock your car door or whatever gets stolen is your own fault side. Anyway, my father was a truck driver, and he spent more time out of state than in. Therefore, it was usually just my mother, my siblings, myself, and occasionally my aunt. Since it was about 5 years ago, I am afraid I don't remember the exact layout of the house. However, Since all the activity takes place in my brother's bedroom, hopefully it won't be necessary. At the time, both of my brothers shared the room. It was small and carpeted, and they had a rather large rug with a city depicted on it. In other words, an average little boy's rug. The room was square-shaped, so when you look up, there was no hidden areas or crannies burying the closet. After the first step in, directly to the right of the bunk bed. The bunk bed was pressed in a corner, with one side and one end completely against the wall. Straight ahead was a large window, taking up a considerable chunk of the wall, and to your left was a closet and a toy box. Again, the room was small, so the space between the bunk bed and the window was only a yard and a half at best. The closet was closer to the wall with the window, and the way my brother slept had his eyesight nearly parallel to the door. So this is the way my brother describes the activity. In the early hours of the morning, usually between 3 a.m. to 4 a.m., he'd be awoken by a voice asking him, "Are you still awake?" and a tapping on his back. Sorry guys, I got to turn this down. It's getting late. Up in this hood. In the early hours of the morning, usually between 3 a.m. to 4 a.m., he would be woken up by a voice asking him, "Are you still awake?" and a tapping on his back. When I asked him to describe the tapping, he proceeded to give me a few firm pats on the back with his full hand. He said that it felt like a large masculine hand when it happened, and that rather than a few fingers, he could feel the entirety of the entity's hand against his back. When asked about the voice, he described it simply as extremely deep male voice. He says that this happened every night that we lived in the apartments, and he could feel the entity standing before him when it would ask a question. It was always the same question in the same voice. He always claims that the tapping never changed as well, always at the same consistency too. But no matter how quickly he awoke and how he responded, he had never once seen the entity or heard it say anything besides its initial question. Now we get the truly bizarre parts of his experience. After being awoken by a voice, he would sit up, only to be greeted by different entities. He said that he instinctively knew that they were different from the entity that woke him up. He describes them as having a scrawny but fit male body type, with short, tattered brown loincloths, coarse black hair, ended just shy of their shoulders. He says that their faces were humanoid, but their teeth were extremely sharp, and their eyes were bright amber color. One of the entities had red skin, the other had blue skin, and they both had black stripes. He says that it looked as if it was paint, like they had dipped themselves in it. However, the most bizarre feature by far has to be the tails. He says that both individuals had tails resembling that of a monkey. He had been staring, shocked and understandably scared, when a loud bang erupted from his closet, which was where they were residing. He says that he had closed his eyes and flinched when the bang happened, and when he opened them, they were gone in the faint sound of footsteps. He stood up the entire night, not sleeping until daylight came. He never saw them again, but he still remembers them clearly from that night. On another night, he was again woken by the voice. As usual, it asks him its question and is gone by the time he awakens. However, this time, when he rouses, he sees the shadowed silhouette of what seems to be a human figure. He says that he couldn't tell the gender of the figure, only that it was tall. It seemed to be personified shadow. The figure just stood in front of the bedroom window, and after a few moments of staring at it, the strange figure simply walked out of the room. This went on for 5 months that we lived in that apartment. There are many stories he holds from those 5 months. However, it would take too much time and space to sit down and record them all. Every night he claims to have seen a different entity, one with only consisting being the male voice in the beginning. The moment in which we moved out, actually, all activity ceased, and he says that he hasn't seen any of them since. He's still unaware of what exactly it was that he experienced in that bedroom, and he hopes this site can help. What exactly did my brother see, and what was happening in that room? Thank you for reading, and please don't be afraid to put your theories or ideas in the comments. That was an interesting one. Interesting. Weird entities. Keep asking him if he's still awake. That wouldn't be annoying at all. Alright, so yeah, let's go here. Let's try this one. A swig of water. Alright. This has a weird title, so I'm gonna go with it. This is entitled The Goat That Would Watch Me Sleep by California K. All right, about 10 years ago, maybe less, is when this happened. I was about 18 and still living at my parents'. My best friend named Jessica and I were really into witchcraft. We had many spell books, played with the Ouija board quite a bit, got into the whole astral projection thing. You name it, we were into it. We tried our best not to look into black magic, though. But being stupid teens, we tried to put curses on those we hate. She practically lived with me and would tell me how she felt something in the house. She said it didn't feel like a good presence, but it felt rather dark. I too felt a presence, and like there was no more than one supernatural thing in the house. Jessica ended up going to her family's for a little while, so I had my bedroom all to myself. My bed was a day bed that was up against the wall, with the bedroom door right at the front of the door. The edge of the bed, where my head was, is a closet. Across the room, adjacent to the bed, were two long windows that went from wall to wall. One night I was sleeping facing the windows. I woke to a slight tapping sound. I slowly opened my eyes and saw a goat looking in the window. Come on. Sorry, guys. Driving was getting good. Computers started being... Yeah, goat, come on. I'm sorry, guys. My computer is being really crappy. I need to just get a new one. Okay. A goat. Yeah, I mean, that's the title of it. All right. One night, I was sleeping, facing the windows. I woke to a slight tapping sound. I slowly opened my eyes and saw a goat looking in the window. It had red eyes and horns with hooves placed on the windowsill. I was petrified. I slowly closed my eyes and turned my back, pretending I didn't see anything. I kept hearing a light tap, but forced myself to sleep. This happened twice, then never again. I told my mom about something at my window, and she told me, I know there's something in the house. You and Jessica invited it in. I don't know if it's true, but whatever it is, I didn't want it to ever come back. It never did, and I hope I will never see it again. I was not dreaming, and I know it as a fact. Does anyone know what it could have been? To this day, it still gives me chills thinking about it. Out of all my experiences with supernatural, this was the eeriest. A goat, huh? Yeah, I mean, sorry, I apologize about. Well, first off, this is live, and I'm not getting paid for this. It's just mostly fun. So, but I do apologize for if I stutter or stammer, or mainly I apologize about the most frustrating thing for me is my computer will be funky from time to time. I did spill water on it the other day. Could have something to do with it, but I'm not sure. All right, so this one's called A Green Imp, a Demon Tale. by Checkmate. This story takes place in 1975. At the time, I was only 5 years old, but this event has been burned into my memory, and I don't believe I shall ever forget it. My parents and I had taken a road trip to California to see my mother's aunt and uncle who lived in Fresno. This trip crosses long stretches of Nevada desert and took place sometime in the fall. These were the days before air conditioning. That was standard in vehicles, so it wasn't very hot, but I do remember it being quite warm. Anyways, after our visit was over and we headed back to Salt Lake City, which was where we lived, we had taken a different route to my mom's uncle, who said it was faster, but he ended up getting us very lost, wandering around Nevada's back roads. It was starting to get late. My parents had been arguing, and I can remember being very hungry. We finally came across a small town. Not really sure it's classified as a town. It had a motel, a gas station, a restaurant, and about half dozen trailer homes. So we stopped for the night. First, we checked into the motel, which only had a basement room available, with two double beds in. Left our suitcases and wandered over to the restaurant to eat. After dinner, my father got directions back to the main highway, and we went back to our room for the night. Let me paint a picture of our room. It had no carpeting on the floor, just concrete. The double beds were against one wall, and one small window above them. I really can't remember the color scheme, but I remember the bathroom only had one toilet and a sink in it. Anyways, I remember the bed were hard as rock, and I couldn't get to sleep right away. So to get comfortable, I had a habit of letting my arm hang down the side of the bed. I slept a lot on my stomach as a kid. For some reason, this made it easier to get to sleep, and I faded off. I was fast asleep when I felt something tug at my arm. We had a dog named Christy, an English settler, who sometimes would tug at my arm while I was sleeping, letting me know that she wanted to play. But on this trip, we hadn't brought her along, so I mumbled to her to stop and to let me sleep. A little while later, I felt the tug again, but a little harder this time. It was enough to wake me almost completely. I looked around and didn't see anything, then put my head back down with my arm on the right side again. Moments later, this tug pulled me all the way off the bed. I landed hard on the floor and started screaming for my mom. My mom jumped up and saw what was happening. This greenish ball of mist with sickening bright green glow center had pulled me off the bed and it started dragging me across the floor. I can remember being held down in a weird vice-like grip, but not being able to see any hands holding onto me. Well, my mom jumped out of bed and ran up behind this thing and screamed, "No!" Then she smacked it with her hand, which made contact with the thing, and you could hear a loud smacking sound. Once this thing was hit, it let go of my arm and let out a high-pitched scream like I've never heard before. It started whirling around like a funnel, then disappeared into the drain that was located in the center of my room. My dad had slept through most of this and hadn't woken up until he heard the thing scream. I ended up sleeping between my parents this rest of the night with no further incidents. Years later, I was telling this story to someone who had a great deal of experiences with the paranormal supernatural. What he told me was this: the thing I encountered was an imp. An imp is a low-level demon that feeds upon the souls of young children. They also have the ability to take shape or form and usually appear as children to other children. He also told me that folklore and mythology has some root in fact, and that many of the old fables are still true today as they were hundreds of years ago. He also told me that I was very lucky. Many a missing child has ended up in the hands of these demons and have never been found. This is my story. Thank you. That was a good. I like that one. All right, let's try something different here. Okay, let's see. Let's see here. I already picked up this. All right, this is entitled The Messenger of Death by Answers in the Dark. In future ones, I think I'm going to maybe, I don't know, I think half the fun for this is me reading this as I'm going and not knowing what I'm getting into, because I have fun reading these now. I don't think I would find this as fun if I was to sit down and like read every single one and then pick them out and reread them for a stream. I think it's funner just to read it on the fly like this. The Messenger of Death by Answers in the Dark. I gotta adjust my seat just a little, guys. All right. Stinking chair. All right, here we go, guys. Sorry about that. The Messenger of Death. As this is my first experience I'm sharing on this website, or any in that case, and I plan on sharing all of them as my time allows, I would like to preface my story with a bit of background regarding my experiences. In the past 10 years, ever since I was about 10 years old, I've had some profound paranormal experiences. These paranormal happenings never happen one after another, but instead I will witness something, and then it will be a year or so before I have another encounter. The only exception to this is that when I first began experiencing things, it was much more frequent. On that occasion, where some being or entity would make itself known to me, I would find I seemed to go through some of the same emotional stages. Also, I might add that every experience I have had has been while I am alone. First, I begin to feel uneasy, like I'm being watched. Almost always, this comes on suddenly, as a complete shift in my mood. One minute, I can be completely peaceful and at ease, without the slightest thought in my head that would suggest feeling otherwise. Then, quite quickly, as my uneasiness grows, every fiber in my body and soul knows, without a doubt, that I am not alone. Unseen, there is someone or something that is with me. Oh man, lost my place. I'm gonna kill my computer, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm really getting into this too, and it's just being a pain in the butt. I don't remember where the hell I was at now. Just getting annoyed with this computer. Yeah. All right. I'm just gonna start here. Yeah. All right. 1 minute, I can be completely peaceful and at ease without the slightest thought in my head that would suggest any feeling otherwise. Then quite quickly, as my uneasiness grows, every fiber in my body and soul knows without a doubt that I am not alone. Unseen, there is someone or something that is with me. At this point, I am filled with dread, and the presence will make itself known. Usually, my experience will not involve anything physical. I've never been touched nor harmed in any way, but I will experience terror unlike anything the physical world has come close to making me feel. Most times this happens as I'm settling in to go to sleep. In that instance, what will happen is my whole body will lock up in fear. I will not move. I will not blink. I just stare. The feeling I receive in return from the entity is usually an amusement at my fear. I have normally experienced this as the intensity grows. I will usually faint or just fall asleep. I really don't know what happens. I wake up soon after, and I can feel the presence is gone. And even though it is so vivid and real when it happens, for even a week after the incidents, the reality of it all soon fades, and I find myself doubting that it could even have happened. But in my heart and my mind, I think back on it. It all comes back so clearly and real, as real as any other memory, as real as remembering my wedding or driving to work this morning. But how can something that strange and intense fade so quickly? And how do I go through the exact same motions every time? I find myself wrestling with so much doubt about the possibility of it all. And when I'm reading others' stories, trying to find clarity in something that might understand and relate to my own experiences, I find myself saying, that's ridiculous. There's no way that that is real. But really, how can I say such a thing with now what I've seen? I think that even though these things are purposely exposing themselves to me, there's something spiritual that is put in place by them. And who knows what? The universe that represents the experience afterwards without any conscious effort. Anyways, I wanted to share one story that is not quite like the rest, as I've just described. This happened a year or two after everything started happening to me. I was living with my parents at the time and was around 17 years old. Our house was in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, in an unincorporated part of town near the chain of lakes. In this area, there are plenty of foxes, coyotes, and raccoons, and the like that were surrounded by forest preserves in the neighborhood. In our neighborhood, there were two streets that ran parallel to each other, which extended from the main highway, moving downhill and onward toward the lake. The two streets eventually came together at the bottom of the hill in a horseshoe shape which connected them. Our house was located at the bottom of this horseshoe. On this particular night, my car had been parked up the hill a ways. It was late, around midnight or so. It was my turn to take the garbage cans out to the road for the pickup in the morning. I had been procrastinating doing it, as I was big into the World of Warcraft, a popular video game. At the time, I'd been busy with what that for most of the days. Everyone in the house was asleep at this time, as it was a school night. I decided it was time to get my lazy butt off the computer, take out the garbage, as well as move my car back to the driveway. I stepped out into the dark, fall night, leaves covering the ground, and the world dimly lit by nothing but the moon's lunar glow. I grabbed onto a garbage can. I'm sorry, guys. I grabbed onto a garbage can and began rolling it down the rather long driveway, about 6 car lengths. As I approached the end of the driveway, I noticed something odd looking across the street, and about 10 yards to my left. What I thought I was seeing was a very large dog, much larger than normal. I could see no discerning features of this dog. I was observing it from the sideways profile of it, and basically what I saw of it was darker and blacker than anything surrounding it. I could see that it had a wolfish or wild look to its fur. I could see its eyes and nose. Oh, patience, patience. I don't know what the heck's happened with my computer, guys. I want to blame a hacker, but I doubt it's that. I'm assuming it's just my crappy computer. You can't tell a freaking story and just stop and then just stop. You can't do this, computer. That's not how stories are told. Freaking jerk. You bad computer, you. How are you supposed to tell a good story if all of a sudden I have to just stop and wait for freaking 20 seconds? All right. And then it just skips. Okay, thanks. That was great. I really needed that. Okay, dokie. All right, here we go. Try it again. As I stepped outside into a dark fall night, leaves covering the ground, and the world dimly lit by nothing but the moon's lunar glow, I grabbed onto a garbage can and began rolling it down a rather long driveway, about 6 car lengths long. As I approached the end of the driveway, I noticed something odd looking across the street and about 10 yards to my left. What I thought I was seeing was a very large dog, much larger than normal. I could see no discerning feature of this dog. I was observing it from a sideways profile of it, and basically what I saw It was darker and blacker than anything surrounding it. I could see that it had a wolfish or wild look to its fur. I could not see its eyes, nose, or anything specific. But the oddest thing was that it was next to my neighbor's mailbox, and that it was tall, if not taller than the mailbox. As this realization, I froze in my steps. Now, let me say that I have no irrational fear of dogs or wild animals. I've been surrounded by large dogs my entire life and love them to death. I know how to handle and approach dogs that I've never met. For some reason, this particular dog has scared me for my life. As I stood at the end of my driveway, my fear and anxiety began to grow. The animal or apparition began to move and quickly became the most disturbing part of my encounter. This dog moved unlike any animal I've ever seen. It seemed to be moving in slow motion, not just walking, slow, but lurking. It took notice of me and began a slow, methodical march, stalking just behind the mailboxes at the opposite side of the street. When it moved forward, it seemed to almost be floating by, and it stared at me the entire time, though I couldn't see its face. As it phased past me and further past to my right, I was filled with the thought that I had to get in my car, which was about 50 feet up to the street on my left, and I had to shine my light on it. I would never think to run an animal over, but the presence of this thing felt so threatening that in my mind I had already decided that I would sprint to my car and run it over if I could. As the beast moved forward, further to my right, I took off to sprint towards my car. My heart was beating out of my chest, and my adrenaline was like jet fuel in my veins. I was even afraid to look over my shoulder and see if the thing had decided to give chase. I jumped in my car, and as I shined my headlights onto the street, I saw just its tail sticking out from behind nothing but the metal post of a street sign, with no body on the other side. I put my car into drive, and as I moved closer to the sign, the tail protruding from, the tail seemed to move forward past the sign and disappear into nothing. I circled the street for several times and drove through the neighborhood to try and locate it, but I could not find it. I had little sleep that night. I called my girlfriend, scared out of my mind, asking her to help me rationalize what just had happened. She seemed disturbed by what I was telling her and asked me if I've ever heard of the black dog omen. I had no idea what she was talking about, and she said she thought it was supposed to be a messenger of death. This freaked me out, and I was afraid of mine and my family and loved ones' lives. And I kid you not, that less than a week later, my neighbor committed suicide, and so did someone about 5 houses down from us that same week. Sorry for the long story. I've never shared these before with anyone except for a close friend of my wife. She was my girlfriend that I mentioned. I would appreciate anyone's comment on anything that I've mentioned in the post. I would love to find someone trustworthy to relate to and to learn from others' experiences. I will be posting more of my experiences whenever possible. Thank you. I apologize again for my effing computer. It's flipping annoying and it wants me to drop kick it. No, half of it's my fault. I'm behind updates and all sorts of stuff. So hack away, hackers. Get my cheesy paranormal stuff. All right, so oh, this one sounds interesting. The Other Me by Meg 086. All right, I'm gonna try to make this one flawless. I like the title of this one, The Other Me by Meg 086. Maybe not. The stinking thing, dude. Dude, I like that name too. Some cool. I like some of the titles these people name and stuff. Dirty dirt. You gonna load? Maybe, dude. Dirty dirt. The Other Me. Just sharing a personal and very real experience from a few years back. It was New Year's celebration time. I was suffering depression at this point. It felt like my life had taken a turn for the worst. And even worse, it felt like a one-way road. while my family was watching the fireworks on TV downstairs. We were at my aunt and uncle's house. I was upstairs lying down on a spare bed in a deep state of depression. I literally felt like a new year of nothing again. I was self-loathing, hated being alive, and hated the world. I was looking out the window with tears in my eyes. I closed them. It only felt like a few seconds or so. I was then looking at a female figure standing right in front of me, 2 or 3 meters away. She was tall. She was so tall. I noticed a few things about myself and surroundings. 1, I was not asleep. 2, still lying down on something. 3, still in the same room. 4, the physical objects, dressing table, etc., were still there. I could sense them, but they were invisible. 5, calm, almost no emotion. 6, I was on a different plane of existence. 7, it was dark, but not pitch black. I briefly looked around me and looked back at her. I noticed things about her. 1, she was tall. 2, we have the same face. 3, she had no blemishes. Eyebrows were perfect. Long black hair in a perfect bun. Nice body. Skin is slightly paler than mine. 4, wearing a long, unstained, perfectly white robe to the floor. 5, right foot was resting on a gray mass. 6, neutral expression. 7, she was beautiful. Oh, so beautiful. I spoke to her. What are you? She replied, I am a white angel over you. The words came from my mind. I can't remember if her lips moved when she replied. As soon as she said that, I felt like a vacuum sucked me back into my body, and I literally opened my eyes as my body physically jolted. All of that felt only like 3 or 4 seconds, not more than 5. I slept soundly afterward. I now only know her as White Angel. I feel that myself as a person and based on her, but my choices in life made me look and be completely different. The gray mass I feel might be my negativity she was stepping on. Humans weren't meant to look, feel, and be that perfect. Looking back, I sense her to be a very strong character, and I'm not sure what type of angel she is. Not bad, I like that. Alright, so this is an interesting title. An important warning. I'm probably gonna do a handful more and call it a night, guys. Probably maybe 2 or 3 more. Well, I don't know, maybe a couple more. I would like to have a little cigarette break, so I think I'm gonna read this one, take a 2-minute cigarette break, and then come back, read maybe 2 or 3 more. So if there's anyone, I'm not watching chat, guys. So thank you, anyone that is in chat. I should have at least mentioned them. I decided I wanted to try to just focus on reading. I should have probably explained this all at the beginning, but no, whatever. I just felt like reading. I just felt like doing this. So. And yeah, so I haven't seen chat at all. I haven't watched you guys. I hope everybody's well. Thank you. If anyone's in there, 1 person, 8 people, 24, 70, whatever. Thank you. And yeah, I want to do this. I think this is gonna become like more of a regular thing. I'd really like doing this, but I don't know. I don't know if I can take it. Like I think I actually need to look into this. And I was thinking that actually kind of just not too long ago, if it's like even okay for me to do this. I mean, my stuff's not monetized, so I'm not making any money off this, but I'm not sure if I can even like technically do this, but I'm pretty sure I can, because I'm just reading them. I'm not like putting them down or making fun of them or nothing. I'm just reading them. I'm giving these people a voice. So yeah. All right, so I'm going to read this one and take just a quick little break, 3 minutes tops, and then come back, read a handful more, maybe some more. I don't know, we'll see, but at least 2 or 3 more after my little break. So, I don't know how long I want to keep these. I don't know. I'm doing everything is just like on the gut these days, for good or bad. All right, so and this is entitled "An Important Warning" by Josh 111. This is my first story here, and I am sharing with you an experience that me, my cousin, and my sister had just a few days ago. My aunt, uncle, and my little cousin were visiting. On Saturday morning, my mom decided to take my aunt and my uncle on a trip around town and see the surroundings. My cousin was sick that day, so my sister and I asked to stay at home and look after him. Right after we had breakfast, my cousin told us he felt like he was going to throw up. So we quickly went to the bathroom, but he didn't want us to open the door to the bathroom or even go inside. He almost begged us. I swear I've never seen him like this before. I mean, he almost cried. When asked why not, he said it is dangerous. We didn't want to force him because he didn't feel well and looked scared as hell. So my sister quickly took him outside so he could do his business in the garden. While they were outside, I decided to open the door to the bathroom just a little bit. I did, and what I saw in there startled me. Right beside the shower, there was a big funnel web spider. I shut the door and called for my sister and my cousin. Living in Lake Macquarie, Australia, we're pretty much aware of the dangers. But I've been living here all my life, and I've seen a funnel web spider only once. However, I know that if she bites you, all you can do is call the ambulance and hope you'll survive. It's the most poisonous spider around these parts. Now, my cousin has never seen one before, that's for sure. He's Canadian, and they don't have those kind of spiders up there. We've been looking after him, and the whole morning and since he was sick, didn't let him go anywhere alone. It was impossible he had seen that spider before I did. When I showed him the spider, he was shocked. When I asked him how he knew about it, he replied that he didn't know exactly that there was a spider. He just felt that there was something. He looked awfully scared. When he asked me if the spider is dangerous, and I said it is deadly poisonous, he just thanked God for protecting him. Later, when I asked him, he told me he often has those warnings. My sister, though, doesn't believe in it because he's just a little kid, but she has no explanation. Well, I don't want to imagine what could have happened if he wouldn't have had this warning. I'm sure he would have had trouble surviving if the spider would have bitten him. So I am thankful, but I'm wondering how could he possibly known about it? I know the story has nothing to do with ghosts, but still, it's an incident that is unexplainable to us. It seems a bit paranormal. Thank you for reading, and hope you have any suggestions. And sorry for mistakes. I'm typing this on the phone. Joshua. Thank you, Joshua. All right, guys. Just gonna play this cheesy music I have. Spooky cheesy music for a couple. I'll just literally be on 2 or 3 minutes. Be right back. All right. This next one is entitled Telephone Call. All right, settle down. Telephone Call by BAD, or Bad, maybe? So, all right. I've been gone for a while. We've been trying to put everything behind us. Nothing has been happening since my last story, maybe a month or so. The other night, my cousin and my best friend were all over at my house. We were all in my room, me, Darian, Lele, JJ, and Josh. Amanda was in Darian's room, playing on the computer. We had the lights off, and we were reading ghost stories like we did when we were little, and see who went for the lights first. So we were all a little jumpy. But when JJ found my other stories, everyone got really freaked out. After that, we went on to read more stories, and suddenly we heard something fall and run. It sounded like a small animal scurrying across the floor like a mouse. But I know for a fact we don't have that. So we looked over, and I assumed someone had knocked my phone off the cradle and onto the floor. So we bent over my bed to look for it. We couldn't find it, so we just went on. Then beeping. First it came really slow and soft, then it sped up, beeping a lot and loudly as if it were on surround sound or something. The beeping stopped, and then the phone rang once. We all looked over at it. Everyone's breath was held. We grabbed someone's cell phone and called Amanda to make sure she was okay. She came into the room and turned on the light. We all tried to explain ourselves, but she just stared and looked at us like we were crazy. JJ froze and told us his arm was numb and he couldn't feel it. I reached over and touched it. It was way cooler than his right arm. Maybe an hour later, a large bruise formed on the cold arm. It looked like a large palm, as if someone had grabbed him hard. This all happened about 3:40 a.m., if that might have anything to do with it. Afterwards, I thought about it, and we were all trying to find some reason for it. I Weird. Okay, they for whatever reason they gave this thing here the he gave this kid gave the creature the figure the number 69 for its title. So I number 69, the number to figure out who may have called. Oh, he star 69. Man, I haven't seen that freaking forever. Star 69. That's what it is. I'm sorry. I star 69. Yeah. If you put it, okay, yeah. So he star 69 the number to figure out who may have called. It came back as my friend's number, and she would never call my house that late. Also, JJ was researching how many times it beeped. I forgot, but divided by another number that beeps, it equaled out to 666. I don't know, but it was just something creepy and unexpected, seeing as it's been so calm here the last month or so. Also, we found out if you turn on my lights and take a picture in the corner of the room, you see 3 orbs. I'll get a picture up if I can. It was the first time of me seeing them, so I don't know, but I'll try. Another related story. We hear whispering in the Darian's room. I could have sworn I heard my mom talking to me through the door, but she was in her room sleeping and snoring, and Darian always hears something saying, "Drop it." So now we have to go on. We have, I'm sorry. So now we have that going on too. I guess maybe playing it off as paranoia may have just ticked them off. Yeah, funny man. I haven't heard anybody use a reference star 69 in someone in a long time. Took me my pop culture brain couldn't like it took a second for it to click in what the hell he was talking about. Funny. All right, guys, I'm gonna do one more and call it a day. This one's called "That Day I Started to Believe in Ghosts" by Dragon Mom. Yeah, this is gonna be the last one we're gonna call it. So yeah, these will get better. Like I have to figure out what the hell's going on with my computer. Most likely it's just updates and stuff. If I didn't have it stopping and freezing on me, this would have been pretty much a damn perfect night. The only reason I mean, I had a few stammers and stuff, but other than that, the major faux pas were because of this damn computer. All right, so here we go. This is called That Day. Oh, I just want to make sure I get the title exactly right. That Day I Started to Believe in Ghosts by Dragon Mom. Good on computer. All right, so back in high school, I went over a friend's house after school. While we were in her room, she decided to tell me that there was a ghost in her house. I, at the time, did not really believe in ghosts, and I honestly thought she was crazy. She began telling me what crazy things would happen at her house. She said that the ghost, or whatever it was, would change the TV channels, change her radio stations, and rip her cat pictures off the wall. These pictures were ones that she got out of a calendar and hung on the wall. After she told me these things, we decided to watch the TV. She would put the TV on a certain channel, and the channel would change. Every time she put it back on the same station, it would change to another. Yet it freaked me out a little bit. Like I said, I didn't believe in ghosts. I just thought to myself that oh, see, good old computer, there you go. I'm sorry, guys. Like I said, I didn't believe in ghosts. I just thought to myself that she changed the channel with the remote that goes to the TV. No big deal. Next, she wanted to listen to some music, and the same thing happened. The station would change from what she wanted to be listening to something different. I just knew somehow she was messing with me. Like my computer's messing with me. Gremlins. Hello. Well, she was getting mad that nothing we did was working out. No watching TV and no listening to music without changing on us. So she started digging under her bed, as most kids in school. They love to hide things under their bed or just shove a bunch of stuff under there. I heard something great. Now she was trying to get me to believe that cat pictures in her room ripped. She looked up at me from digging under her bed. She started to look at my cat pictures. I looked around the room, and they all looked fine until I got the one that was behind my head. It was ripped in half. I almost screamed when I saw it. I knew there was no way anyone could have done that. It was not ripped when I came in, and no one was in there but her and me. I looked in the mirror and across the room. I saw a dark shadow. I took off down her stairs, and I told her I was calling my parents to get me. I never did go back over to her house again. That day, I started to believe in ghosts. Awesome. That was a good story. I like a lot of these. A lot of these stories are actually pretty good, or decent, I guess you'd say. I mean, they're not obviously like pro Stephen King or whatever, but I like them. If it wasn't for my computer being a pain in the bunghole, the story should have been smoother. So yeah, I'm gonna call it a night, guys. Thank you very much for checking it out, and yeah, I think I'm gonna kind of make this maybe a thing. So stick around, and maybe once a week, maybe be doing this. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how I incorporate it. I don't know. I don't know where the hell I'm gonna be in a month at this point. So yeah, guys. Thank you. Enjoy. Sleep tight. Don't let the creepy, spooky ghost bite you. Good night, guys. See you.